Hey everybody! As a complement to the shaders we use to generate a rain or a star field, we will create some nice snowfall. It's true that I've already programmed snow once, but that was in a 3D scene and with particles. This time I'll use a 2D shader, but with a nice spatial effect using several layers, as you can see in the background right now. Let's get to it. So, what's the main difference between snowfall and rain or a star field? Yes, that's right, snowflakes shouldn't all fall in the same direction and at the same speed because they are light and sometimes the wind plays with them. And to avoid creating just white snow on a black background, I'll once again use a screenshot from our game. So let's create a new scene right here and call it snow. Okay, and as I said, I will use a screenshot, the usual one, this one, just drag it to the scene. The Sprite 2D node was automatically created and I'll just fix some parameters, transform, reset position 0, 0 and offset, cancel, centered. Now it is perfectly centered, and let's not forget about the material. In the material section, let's create new shader material, click and shader, new shader, snowfall GD shader, canvas item, this is correct. Let's just put it to the shaders folder and create and click again to open in the editor. Let's expand a little bit and I will as usual delete the vertex function and light function as we won't work with them at all. Okay, let's start with uniform parameters, which we'll later use to control all the properties of our falling snowflakes. We will need 5 of them. First one would be called layers, uniform float layers with a hint range and initial value 50. Okay, and we'll need many layers, a big number, so let's start at 10 and end at 200. Very well. The second one will be called depth, because we'll emphasize spatial depth as you could have observed at the beginning of the video. So uniform float depth, another hint range, and the initial value 0.5. This time we are normalized, so it would be from 0 to 1 with a step 0.01 for some fine tuning. The third one, let's call density. Add the density of snowfall in the layers. Uniform float density, hint range, and starts at 0.5 as well, from 0 to 1 and 0.01. The fourth parameter would be speed, and I think this is pretty clear. By speed we define the speed of the snowfall, of course. And again, it can start at 0.5. It seems that almost all parameters here are normalized. And the fifth one, the last one, which is definitely not normalized, I'll call it wind, because it would be the tilt of the fall as it simulates side wind. Wind, hint range, and starts at 0, because this time we want negative and positive values to simulate the direction from left to right, and 0.01. Alright, we can move on and write the skeleton of our algorithm. For now, it won't do anything, it will just outline the direction we will take. And to see the snow creation more clearly, I will temporarily hide the background image. So, vector 2, UV, would be the usual coordinates UV, and as you might remember from previous videos, if I leave it as it is, the snow would fall upwards. So let's change the sign to make it fall down. Very well. Sorry, very well. And now we need to fix the aspect ratio because we want our snowflakes to be circular, not elliptic. So resolution we can easily define by inverse of the texture pixel size, because now we are working with the texture, so we don't need to define resolution as another uniform parameter. And of course the calculation, so UVX would be multiplied by the ratio resolution X divided by resolution Y. Okay, next we will need a time variable to simulate the fall, so float time is time times speed. And now the calculation itself. As I said, we'll be using multiple layers, so let's start with defining the cycle to create these layers. For float I from 0 to number of layers I++, and inside we will do something later. And finally, to assign the result of the calculation to the color would be vector 4, vector 3 color, as we'll be working in grayscale, just shades of white or shades of gray for the snowflakes and 1 for the alpha value. All right, what is not correct? Vector 4, vector 3, 1 unknown identifier. Of course, I forgot to define the color. Vector 3 color, starts at black color 0. Now it's fine. So let's start by creating a simple snowflake, more precisely its position on the screen. And since we want to work with layers, we will incorporate this factor into the calculation right away. We know that the farther layers should display more snowflakes than the closer ones, so we will multiply the UV coordinates by the current index I and the depth factor. Vector 2, let's call it flake, would be UV coordinates, as I said, multiplied by, and now we will use this 1 plus I by depth. Okay, which means that when we are at the start, the I is 0, so we would simply just multiply by 1, nothing changes, and all the next layers would be shifted and zoomed out a little bit. Of course, the position is not enough, and to display something, we also need a shape. And to avoid getting identical looking snowflakes, we will use all available values, including position and layer, for the shape calculation. First, we'll create a periodically repeating pattern using the modulo function, and then introduce a pseudo-random factor into it. So it would be, let's call it shape, and we'll do it with, as I said, modulo and absolute value, because we don't want any negative values right here. Flake and 1, which gives us values from 0 to 1, and let's subtract 1. All right. This is necessary, otherwise the shape would be too prominent and it wouldn't look good, especially after the ongoing calculations. And of course we need to shape it a bit more. 0.01. Again, these formulas are usually the result of my previous experiments, and it would be a bit boring to explain all steps I took to get into this point. So let's just write it out. Fract 10 by flake. Okay, and again we need to subtract 1. Very well. With that, we have defined the center of the snowflake, and to display it with a blurred edge, we will need the distance of the current pixel from its center. We'll then use this as a parameter for the smooth step function, which is the common solution for isolating the visible part of an element. So let's define the distance. Float dist is 0.5 by max. Now we will simply use the already defined vector shape to get the distance by maximum of various subtractions and additions, because this will give us the best result. Shape x minus shape y and shape x plus shape y plus max shape x shape y. It is something like interpolation and it works quite well, so let's do it this way. Okay, and to fix the final color, or the brightness I mean, and now it should have some edge and the edge should be blurred, so we will first define it and then use it as a parameter of the smooth step function. Float edge is 0.05 by minimum 0.5 absolute value I minus 5 and 1. Okay, so we have distance, we have the edge, and now we need to use it in the color to finally display something. So color would be increased by vector 3, and as I said, the smooth step function, which gives us these blurred edges, and the edges are edge and negative edge, and the third parameter is the distance. Okay, let's wait for it and let's show everything. Alright, so something has appeared on the screen. As I mentioned, the pattern is still quite regular for now, but with a bit of imagination we can see the foundations of future snowfall. Now we need to slightly randomize the positions of individual snowflakes. We'll return to the definition of the flake, where is it? Here, and add a wind shift variable, which will shift the current snowflake using another periodic function and the density parameter. We'll also include the wind parameter, but for now we'll leave it in its default value. So the wind shift, let's do it here. Float wind shift would be, now as I said, we need to use the density multiplied by a formula which contains the wind force, the wind parameter, and it would be again modulo I times pi and 1. This will simply gives us a better result because it is not as regular as it would be if we just use a simple modulo for I and 1, and minus wind plus 0.5, 1, 2, 3, and semicolon. Why 0.5? Because if we don't do it, it would be tilted by default, and the range we used here from -2 to 2 would have been shifted, which doesn't look good. We want 0 to be just falling directly downwards. So this way we will fix that, and now we can incorporate this value into the calculation. So let's increase the flake by vector 2, that would contain flake y multiplied by the wind shift, and the second parameter would be 0. We are increasing just the x coordinate, and we're using flake y, so it would look better, because if I didn't do that, the tilted pattern of the original structure would remain tilted. As you remember, there were some tilted lines or just hints of the lines, and this is definitely not what we want. This way it evens out. The result is now a bit closer to the desired snowfall. Also, I'm not sure if you can recognize that in the YouTube video. Let's just increase the zoom factor. Yeah, something is definitely there. And so to give us a better sense of it, we'll finally introduce some movement. I will add a fall variable that will change over time and also based on the layer index, so that the farther snowflakes move more slowly. So where should we do here? It right here, I guess, before flake plus, because we need to define the fall first. Float fall is, and now we can finally use time and divide it by 1 plus I times depth and multiplied by 0.03 to give it some better look. So again, we are using the index and the depth to make the farther layers fall slower, and of course we need to use the fall in the formula, this one. Instead of 0 we will use fall. Wait for it, and yes, we can see that the moving effect is much clearer and we've almost achieved complete snowfall. Let's try adjusting individual parameters, as at this point we should have all of them implemented in the code. So for example, if I increase layers, we can see more chaos right here, or the depth. Yeah, lower depth means more snowflakes are visible because the farther one are more prominent. Density, decrease, increase, and the speed, of course. Yes, and the wind to the right, to the left. Okay, let's get back to the initial values. And we can also try how the snow will look with the original background of our scene, which means now we need to add the texture, the pixel from the texture. It would be texture from texture and UV in capital letters, so we don't flip the image. And yes, it's not the worst result. Because the background isn't black, we've almost eliminated the visual artifacts that were much more noticeable on a blank background. However, we'd like to make final adjustments. Firstly, we want to get rid of the mentioned noise in the image, and secondly, we'd like to further disrupt the regularity of the snowfall pattern. So let's go ahead and temporarily return to black background. Just comment this out. Okay. We can notice, especially if I zoom in a bit like this, that the shape of the flakes isn't perfect, which stands out mainly at the nearest layer, the biggest one. Can you see that? Okay, additionally, the snow falls too regularly. We will address both issues by incorporating a pseudo-random factor into the code for the snowflake shape. However, this time we can't use a typical pseudo-random function or noise texture, as the resulting chaos would be too chaotic. The following algorithm will give us a much more suitable result, and we'll see how the flakes smooth out nicely. This code is not my creation. I found it on some free resource and improved it a bit for our purpose. First, I'll define a 3x3 matrix, and since it won't change, I'll make it a constant right after the uniform parameters. Let's scroll up, and right after the uniform parameters, mat3 matrix P is mat3, and now 3 vectors, vec3, 13, 23, 21, second one, vector 3, 21, 28, 11, and the third one, vector 3, 21, 14, and 61. Okay, as I said, I've taken this matrix from another resource, so let's just suppose that these constants are the best for the result we want. And now the usage in the code. For proper movement and shaping, we need to divide the screen into tiles, get something like an ID for a specific snowflake, perform a shift to make a slight change in the falling direction, and finally obtain the resulting vector, which we'll use to adjust the shape and filter out the background noise. In the code, I will repeatedly use the floor and fract functions, which are fundamental to all such algorithms. So let's find the algorithm. Here it is, after the flake and before the definition of the shape. Let's do it. Vector 3, as I said, we start with the ID of the tile, which is simply a floor value of the flake, and I, as we know, floor is the nearest integer, which is lower than the float in the flake variable. And now the shift. So vector 3 tile shift is floor of tile ID, and now something to make it more chaotic, multiply by 1e negative 5. What is that? This is the short for 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. Okay, and plus fract with C, sorry, tile ID. So this is the shift, and finally shift of the flake. So that would be vector 3 flake shift is fract of by multiplied by 1e3. As we have a positive number here, this is simply 1 and 3 zeros of 1,000, plus tile shift and divided by fract of now the matrix P multiplied by tile shift. Okay, as I said, these three lines belong to the algorithm I copied from somewhere, from elsewhere, so I probably just keep it as it is. And now we'll add the resulting vector to the shape calculation. Since flake shift is a vector 3 and we need a vector 2 for the shape, we'll just use only the first two components. So now we need to increase it by flake shift.xy. Wait for it and look at that beautiful snow. However, there's still a bit too much of it, especially in the farther layers, and the distant so we'll improve it. We'll improve the final pixel color calculation. Where is it? Here, where we define the color. So we have this smooth step, and now let's multiply that by a small number to filter out the some of the snow, and it would be flake shift and x coordinate divided by 1 plus 0.02 multiplied by I multiplied by depth. Yeah, that's it. Again, we are using this kind of formula to incorporate the index of the layer, so it affects the farther layers more than those that are closer to the camera. And I guess we are done. I'll restore the original background. Let's get rid of this. And here we go. I would say that the light snowfall gives the scene a completely different feeling. And what if we want more snow, like we could have seen at the beginning of the video? To achieve that, we'll need to increase the number of layers, decrease the depth to highlight the background layers, increase the density, and of course the speed. Let's do it. Maximum layers 200, depth must be decreased, let's say to 0.1. Alright, density increase to 0.8, and the speed, how about 1? Yeah, definitely. I guess we would have to increase the hint range to get some even faster values. Let's do it now. Instead of 1, let's make it 2. And now we can go to 1.5, I mean. This is nice. And we have a beautifully snow-covered square. If we change the flowing water, like this one in the fountain, to icicles, it would be absolutely perfect. Thank you for watching, and if you liked the effect, I'd appreciate any likes, comments or shares of this video. As you may have noticed, I also used some constants in the algorithm that could be converted to uniform parameters to further tweak the overall snowfall effect. For example, I didn't work with brightness this time, which could correspond to one of the constants. In any case, I'm glad I could add snowfall to our shader collection, as it will definitely be useful to someone. For now, take care. I wish you a lot of success with your projects, and I'll see you in the next video.